Philadelphia Eagles are about to attempt something no team in modern NFL history has ever accomplished, my friend. And most of the fan base does not even know this record exists. It is not about points. It is not about sacks. It is not about any of the statistics that show up on the scoreboard during the game. It is about an advanced, silent metric that measures exactly how much a defense prevents opposing quarterbacks from completing the passes they should be completing. And the Eagles led this statistic in 2 consecutive seasons, something only a single team in the entire modern era has ever done before them. Now, in 2026, there is a real possibility of an unprecedented feat, leading this metric for the 3rd consecutive time. Nobody has ever done that. What is this statistic? Why does it matter so much? And what does it reveal about the defense Vic Fangio is building in Philadelphia? I am going to explain everything about this metric that separates good defenses from historically dominant ones, and why the Eagles are in a unique position to make history in 2026. But first, if you are a die-hard Eagles fan, hit that like button and subscribe right now, because this kind of advanced statistical analysis is exactly what separates people who truly understand defense from those who only look at the final score. The statistic in question is called defensive plus-minus, and the most recent analysis on it came from FTN Fantasy, highlighted by Bleeding Green Nation. In simple terms, defensive plus-minus measures the difference between the passes a defense actually allowed to be completed and the passes that, based on the difficulty of each attempt, should have been completed. In other words, how many completions below expected a defense forces over the course of an entire season. It is a pure measure of how difficult it is to throw the ball against that unit. And the Philadelphia Eagles led the entire NFL in this metric in 2024 and in 2025, becoming the first team to lead defensive plus-minus in consecutive seasons since the New York Jets in 2009 and 2010, right at the peak of the Revis Island era, when Darrelle Revis was considered the best coverage cornerback on the planet. And that is where the comparison gets interesting, and also a little uncomfortable for the skeptical side. The analysis itself acknowledges that the Eagles do not have a player at the absolute level Revis represented back then. But what Philadelphia has is something different. Elite depth across every layer of the secondary. According to the DVOA data cited in the analysis, Quinyon Mitchell finished 2025 ranked 11th among all cornerbacks in the league, DeJean 5th among all nickelbacks, and Drew Mukuba 15th among all safeties. The Eagles joined just 3 other teams, the Seattle Seahawks, Denver Broncos, and Los Angeles Chargers, as the only franchises with at least one player in the top 15 in each of those 3 groups. And, not coincidentally, those are precisely the 4 best teams in the league in defensive plus-minus. The Eagles' dominance in this metric does not come from a single superstar. It comes from having no real weak spot for opposing quarterbacks to attack. And here is why 2026 could be even better than the 2 previous years. The Eagles traded away exactly the weakest link in that chain. The analysis itself points out that Adoree Jackson was a liability in coverage during his first year in Philadelphia. In other words, the vulnerable spot in the secondary. Replacing him with Riq Woolen in 2026, at least in theory, should make this defense even better in the very metric it already leads. Think about the logic of that. A unit that was already number 1 in the league at preventing completions, now swapping its weakest piece for a cornerback with Woolen's size, speed, and range. If the theory holds, the ceiling of this defense in 2026 is frightening. And it is worth remembering that Woolen arrives as a Super Bowl champion, a profile we already discussed in detail in previous videos about the secondary's overhaul. But there is a factor that may be even more important than any individual signing: continuity. Vic Fangio decided to return for a 3rd season as the Eagles' defensive coordinator after publicly flirting with retirement this offseason, and his return is only part of the story. The overwhelming majority of the players who will have a relevant role in the defense in 2026 are entering their 3rd year inside Fangio's system. DeJean, Quinyon Mitchell, Zach Bond, Jalix Hunt, Nolan Smith, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, and Moro Ojomo. Even names like Jihad Campbell, Marcus Epps, and Drew Mukuba already have at least 1 year in the scheme. DeJean himself explained why that matters so much. According to him, being able to play in the same defense for several years means there are more and more things the group can execute, as players understand the finer details of the scheme. Jordan Davis reinforced the same idea, saying the group is not starting from scratch at the whiteboard, but is learning the nuances Fangio adds each year. In a scheme as complex as Fangio's, the third year tends to be exactly the point where the defense reaches its most lethal form. And Vic Fangio's track record gives real weight to that expectation. We are talking about a coordinator with nearly 3 decades of experience running NFL defenses, a winner of the Paul Zimmerman Award for Lifetime Achievement as an assistant, and who has already developed 5 players who are now in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. In his 2 years in Philadelphia, the Eagles allowed the second fewest points in the entire league, the second fewest total yards, and the fewest passing yards. In 2024, the defense jumped from 26th to 1st overall, the biggest defensive leap in NFL history. In Super Bowl LX, that same defense held Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs to just 6 points and 218 yards over the first 57 minutes of the game. That is the kind of resume that turns an optimistic expectation into a well-grounded prediction. It is also worth stepping back to appreciate just how absurd this statistical run is when you consider the era it is happening in. Modern NFL rules are designed almost entirely to help offenses. Defensive backs cannot touch receivers beyond 5 yards. Quarterbacks are protected by an ever-expanding list of roughing penalties, and passing numbers across the league have climbed steadily for well over a decade. In that environment, one built specifically to make it easier to complete passes, leading the entire league in preventing completions once is impressive. Doing it 2 years in a row, as the Eagles just did, borders on defying the direction the sport itself is moving. And that context is exactly why the Jets' back-to-back run during the Revis Island era stood alone for so long. It takes a rare combination of scheme, discipline, and talent to consistently swim against a current the rulebook keeps making stronger. A third straight year would not just be a franchise achievement. It would be one of the most remarkable sustained defensive efforts of the modern passing era. The bottom line, however, demands honesty, and this is where the author of the analysis himself pumps the brakes. He openly admits he would not bet on a plus-minus three-peat in 2026 for one simple reason: nobody has ever done it. And this statistic carries a lot of volatility from one season to the next. Leading the league in preventing completions for 2 straight years is already extremely rare. Doing it for 3 consecutive years would enter completely uncharted territory in NFL history. Factors like the schedule, injuries, and the natural variation in opposing quarterbacks' performance can interfere in ways impossible to predict. But the line that closes the analysis is precisely the one that sums up the entire debate. He would not bet in favor of the three-peat, but would you bet against this group? With the depth the Eagles have, with Woolen replacing the weakest link, and with Fangio's 3rd year maximizing an already dominant system, betting against Philadelphia in this metric seems just as risky as betting in favor of an unprecedented feat. With the defense that has already made history by leading plus-minus for 2 straight years, with the arrival of Riq Woolen strengthening the very weakest point of the secondary, and with the 3rd year of continuity in Vic Fangio's system promising to raise this unit's ceiling even higher, the question left for you, Eagles fan, is direct. Do you bet that the Eagles will make history and lead defensive plus-minus for the 3rd consecutive time in 2026? Or does the volatility of this statistic and the absence of any precedent in NFL history make you bet against it? Drop your opinion in the comments. Do not forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. I will be back later to keep you updated with the latest Eagles news.